Holla if you hear me.
There's no hologram though.
From insane to fame made a proper change. It wasn't nothing like the game, it's just me against the world.
I'm sure it's the situation where people saw the Bette Midler name above Priscilla Queen of the Desert and were like, oh, Bette Midler's in this musical. Like, not
but everybody knows
Tupac is in the musical,
Tupac's
but
dead, right?
Well, I don't know.
Or
Think
is
things. Or that it's, like when I first heard about it, that it's the story of Tupac. And it's like loosely based on a lot of his life experiences, but it's not the story of Tupac.
I guess I always find it interesting, maybe just because I'm so like open and I would like to see a musical version of everything just to like see what it would be like. That it, I mean, I've heard so many people be like, Tupac musical? I'm like, his music's really good and is like ripe for storytelling, so I think it makes a lot of sense. And I thought it was fucking awesome.
Well, I think one of the reasons that it worked is because it wasn't a Broadway musical version of Tupac's music. It was still Tupac's music. Right. And that's probably what people are thinking. Right.
And they're like, there's going to be like a tap number, it's going to be like, you know, one singular sensation, but with like, I'm like, people, this is also like people who like don't fucking see Broadway shows.
Yeah.
Fuck all of you. I don't know. It's really good. Go see it.
Well, they're the same people that are like, I can't believe they're making this musical version of my beloved childhood movie that I'm never going to see because I don't see theater. So what does it matter to you? Anyway. It was great.
It was really good. And I do think actually that it like can appeal to a wider audience if you are not necessarily a musical person, but you like Tupac's music.
Absolutely.
Because it's not like a fucking big Broadway musical at all.
It had a lot of classic musical theater moments, but still within the type of hip-hop music that was happening. Like that song Between the Guys and the Girls. That was very...
Super musical
It was
theater.
super musical theater. But, you know, they were talking about, like, fucking bitches, and the girls were like, mm-mm. It's great.
The thing that I thought was really interesting about it is that it's a pretty well-known story.
Yeah.
It's just like trying to get out of the neighborhood, like trying to live a better life than the one you've been living. So I was sort of like, throughout the show, was like, this is like a story that I've heard a million times.
Absolutely.
But because of the way it's being told, and also because the payoff in the end is always trying to figure out, well, is it going to be like 8 Mile? Or, you know, is he going to get out?
Yeah.
Basically. So I was still like anxious to find out what happens. The thing that I thought was really awesome, because I felt like it took it to a one step further than most stories that tell that story of like the guy that wants to get out of the neighborhood or whatever, is that he really, like Tupac really addresses in his lyrics like the fucked up system and how it is like ruining black men's lives and like how the cards are totally stacked against him.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like that really gets discussed. And Tupac was like, the system is broken for black men.
Yeah. I mean, there's always that line you want to walk with, like, telling the story but not being too preachy, because then then people tune you out. And I thought it did that really well.
Yeah.
And maybe that's because, like, Tupac was such a good storyteller that he was able to tell those things and say those words and give them power without making it repetitive. And it's also just the story, that simple story, breaking it down, is one often told in theater, in books, in plays, so on and so forth. But that music, that demographic is not on a Broadway stage, and that's really important.
I also think the reason why it succeeds is because it's a story you know, but like the characters were all super fresh and well-defined. And, like, you know, I had heard people's criticisms that, like, the women were underused, and I obviously and possibly that I saw a different show because it still was previews. I didn't think the women were necessarily underused because I felt like it wasn't their story, and the women were used well and were well-written female characters for the amount of time they got.
Yeah.
You know? Like, I have a problem with shows when I see a show and I'm like, wow, the women were really underused. I will say that because the performer is amazing and the character that has been written for them is not utilizing their skills.
Yeah.
To the extent I wish. And like, sure, I mean, we all think that Tonya Pinkins should be starring her in her own Broadway musical every fucking season and winning a Tony for it. Like, that's a given. But that can't happen. And I'm happy that Tonya Pinkins, who's such a like fucking skilled actress, is playing this small part. That's really important.
Yeah.
And she's doing it.
And I think because, going back to like Tupac's lyrics, especially that mother character, he wrote so much about his own mother that there already was such a rich character there for her to play.
Yeah. I thought the character of Corinne, played by Saycon, was like spot on.
Yeah.
Like she was like a person. That's why I have problems with like shows that have shitty female characters that are also small female characters, is when they're poorly written.
Yeah. All of her actions were explained in a three-dimensional way, and her relationship between both the guys was realistic and understandable. She was a person.
That's all you need, playwrights. You're like, how do I write female characters? Just write fucking people. Paul Williams. Listen. Love his hair. I just have to say that. I really was digging
like
his
super,
hairstyle.
like asymmetrical.
But also like looks like, I don't work on this at all, but like you know he does.
Oh, that
needs
takes a long time.
That needs to be maintained. But like he wore it very casually.
Yeah.
Anyway, I liked it. He was fucking fantastic.
He was really great.
He was so intense. I thought he did such a good job of sort of being like a brooding, angry at the beginning when he's just gotten out of prison, and really truly fighting against his like instincts to like lash out and is being like, I'm gonna be different. But you can see it like boiling underneath the whole time. And then in the second act when he does like, or I guess at the end of the first act really.
Yeah.
When he becomes like very like viscerally angry. Fantastic.
Yeah, and I feel like if that weren't there, that switch would just be like underwhelming because it would just seem like it came out of nowhere.
Right.
Because his intentions were there and his intentions were clear to be like, I just want rent and food and peace. That's all I need. A roof over my head, food in my stomach, and this job to keep me going. And like, if that like undercurrent hadn't been there when he finally is like, you know what, fuck this.
Yeah.
It would have just seemed disingenuous.
Right.
Like a plot point.
Yeah. And we were sitting super, super close, so like we could really appreciate that. And I hope that if you were sitting, especially in the balcony of the palace, because it's so far away, I hope that it reads that far back, because he's like fucking simmering the whole show, simmering, and then finally comes to a boil.
I mean, I can imagine. Just I feel like his intensity is the kind that reaches.
It's really intense.
Yeah.
What about some
Chris
Jackson? I have to say, as a lesbian, I was very impressed with his shoulders and arms. I've noticed them.
They're nice.
He looks great.
He looks great. I love Chris Jackson.
He's fantastic.
I love Chris Jackson.
He's a little heartbreaker.
Yeah, I know.
Like, not like he breaks, or like he broke my heart, but like in a good way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. There's
his
like
character totally fucking breaks your heart in this show.
Dear Mama was like,
I mean, I knew, like going in, like, I was like, I know that Tonya Pinkins is in the show. Obviously, that song is going to be in there. But, man, when he started going in, that song is so intense. It's so heartbreaking. It's so intense. It's so raw. It's so real. I just have all, like, I love that lyric. Even when you were a crack fiend, you were always my black queen. First of all, great rhyming, Tupac. Well done, sir. It's really a great lyric.
yeah.
And it breaks your heart because it's like, you know, kids and their cracked out moms, but like still loving them. I don't know. It's he just wanted to make good for his mom.
Yeah.
Oh my god, that scene when he left the money in the mailbox and Tonya Pinkins just came straight out and gave it back to him. I mean, her, like, focus and intensity just, like, she just went straight for it. I was like, nope.
Yeah. And was like, these kids aren't going to bother me.
Right.
She was not going to be intimidated, too. I loved also in that scene when slowly, like, the male ensemble was revealed behind them, and it was like all these men, symbolizing all these men who had grown up with, you know, a mother trying to do her best to raise a man.
It's not easy.
I know.
It's so hard.
Oh, I'm glad I don't have kids.
Me too.
Good job, moms and dads. Real tears.
Real tears. From not just Tonya Pinkins.
No, not just
but
Tonya
several
Pinkins.
ensemble members as well, I noticed. During that fucking heart-wrenching funeral scene towards the beginning of the show. Woof.
Real tears here, too.
I probably cried during like 50% of the show.
I cried a lot during that show.
And I'm like, ugh. I mean, it's like genuinely sad shit that's happening.
Yeah.
You know, a good, healthy dose of white guilt. And Tonya Pinkins.
There's no way I can pay you back, but the plan is to show you that I understand. You all appreciate it.
Think of all the art that Tupac and Jonathan Larson could be creating separately or together.
I was gonna say, maybe they would do something together.